Welcome to the Tachless show with Kira Tchernikovsky, a podcast about people who succeed by doing things differently. And today we speak about facilitation. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know, but I have a great, amazing guest who will crack it down for us. Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Kira. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for spending the time with me.
It's my pleasure.
We'll dive just straight into the topic. Can
Sounds
you
good.
please explain to me what facilitation means in simple terms? Because you have years of experience with that, right?
Yeah, well, it's such a great question, and actually not as easy to answer as it seems. There's a lot of different understandings and definitions of facilitation, which we'll explore, I guess, together a little bit more. But one way to just kind of understand what facilitation is and what a facilitator does is to ease the path. So it's about making the path more smooth for the group that you're working with. Now, facilitators, unlike someone who maybe is a professional coach, works with groups of people. So that's sort of one of the distinctive
Mm.
characteristics of facilitation. You could say that you are facilitating an individual. That's completely acceptable to say that. But generally speaking, a facilitator is working with a group of people.
And how big or how small can be the group? Because you're right, that's a distinction.
Yeah, so some facilitators might specialize in smaller groups or teams. So it could be anywhere from, 5 to 20 people that you're facilitating. And other facilitators might specialize in large group facilitation. So it could be hundreds of people, for example, at a conference or a big event like that, where you might have several hundred people who are experiencing a facilitated event at once.
That's super interesting. And then you mentioned conferences and big and small groups. So from your experience, who actually needs the facilitator?
So I would say that you need a facilitator well, in a couple of different scenarios. So one might be when you're feeling stuck, right? You're feeling stuck as a group, you're having difficulty moving forward, perhaps you're challenged at collaborating together or communicating well together. You might need a facilitator when there are multiple perspectives that are required to be part of a process or a decision, a program or a plan. And you want to be able to ensure that all of those voices and perspectives are well heard and are well integrated into whatever the outcome is.
Yeah. And then what would be the regular, most acceptable and understandable examples? I know there is a board meeting, you mentioned the conference. What else can it be?
Yeah, so there's so many different scenarios where you might provide facilitation. So it could be a creative problem solving type of event or collaboration. You might have a stakeholder engagement. So let's say a company wanted to do a co-creation with their customers and wanted to learn from their customers and work together with them. You could facilitate, speaking of customers, you could facilitate a focus group. So on that kind of marketing research side,
Mhm.
that could be a facilitation. Lots of facilitation of strategic planning happens. Yeah, so you can do problem solving. You could facilitate the development of a program. And so, for example, in the past, we've supported like maintenance and operations teams of big buildings to co-create a new maintenance program for their building. So
Really?
yeah, you can facilitate the development of a new brand for your company. So lots of different places and spaces that you might provide facilitation.
Awesome. Then how is facilitator different from a consultant, let's say? Yesterday, I've been at an event with amazing marketing leader. What he does, he changes the brands from to amazing and great. So what's the difference then?
Yes, there is actually quite a significant difference, especially if you're a professional facilitator. We tend to not call ourselves consultants. So even though for many of us, our business model might be a consultancy, because we're providing services through that particular type of business model. We're not necessarily consultants in the sense that we consult on content. So we don't come in as experts on the content itself, like the gentleman you were referring to comes in and probably gives advice, shares his wisdom and knowledge, and perhaps makes recommendations. So that's not what a professional facilitator will do. They are an expert on process. So our job as facilitators is to design a process that helps you meet your objectives. So if your objective is to co-create a new marketing and branding plan with your resource people as well as with your internal team, then we design a process that allows you to do that effectively, probably quickly, and also to help meet some of your experiential aims. So for example, you might want to ensure that the team really understands each other, or that different perspectives are heard. You might have an experiential aim of you want the team to feel enthusiastic and excited about the new brand once you finish the event. So we take all of these objectives and we design a process and lead the group through collaboration so that they can own the content. So the group is the content expert and the facilitator is the process expert.
I get it. So basically, then inviting a brand consultant would be just one step in moving forward towards that higher level strategic process. And you know what? It might be missing a lot.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I've often been brought in by a client where, like, this, we'll just stick with this idea of the brand and branding and marketing example, where we've been brought in to design and lead the process, but they bring in the brand consultant. So the brand,
it makes sense.
right? Okay, so the brand consultant or the other experts, the content or knowledge experts are brought in to be a part of the process and to bring the content and their expertise. And our job is to bring out the best in the group, to help the group be productive, be collaborative together, hear each other. And also, I'm a very big believer that one of my, I see, as a facilitator, I see a huge part of my job as being to help people think differently. So it's not just about collaboration and understanding and getting groups to work well together. I also believe my job is to help people think in new ways. So if creative thinking is required, then I need to bring in tools and techniques that help provoke and inspire creative thinking. Or maybe critical thinking is required. So you need to bring in tools that do that, strategic thinking, decision-making, design thinking, etc. So whatever the type of thinking is required, we're also designing for that. And, you know, through our own kind of questions and process techniques, we're helping to bring that out from the group to help them to ease the path and to help them get real useful outcomes.
Yeah, that sounds like a heavy duty job. Can you elaborate on that, please? Let's say design thinking. How can you help achieve that, given that's kind of a company you are not even an insider in? To me, it sounds like a huge, huge job done by the C-level. How an external facilitator can do that?
Yeah, well, I think that when your job is to be the process expert and the professional facilitator in that context, one of the first questions, because you mentioned the C-suite, that was sort of their job, for example. But one of the first questions that we ask is who needs to be in the room. right? So, we're quite interested in ensuring that all the voices that need to be in the room are there, all the different perspectives that are required to make the program successful are there. And in many cases, that means ensuring that people at all levels of the organization perhaps are involved, if that's the appropriate thing to do for that particular process and those particular objectives. But we would, when you're sort of trained up as a professional facilitator, along the way, one of the things that you do is you learn a lot of different frameworks, methodologies, techniques, theories, and a whole bunch of other kinds of skills that help you design processes so that even if you are not an insider in the company, technically you could almost facilitate anything because you're not there for content. But that doesn't mean you don't need to understand what's happening. You'll find that I wouldn't say it's a divide in the facilitator community, but there's definitely like different people who approach it in different ways. So there's some people who are very, very pure process facilitators, right? So they don't touch content in any way, and they're highly, highly skilled at designing processes for any type of situation. And that's that I kind of sit a little bit more on kind of that end. However, there are also people who come into the profession because they were already experts in something. Okay, so for example,
like me,
you're like
marketing.
you, right? You're already an expert in marketing. I'm actually having a virtual coffee with someone in the UK who is an engineer, but who is now a facilitator, right? So or maybe somebody who was a project manager and then wanted to be focus more on facilitation. So your starting place for coming into the field might be different. My starting place for coming into it was very much at the process side. And what happened over time for me was that I started to find that there were certain areas that I really enjoyed facilitating. So like creative problem solving, for example. And then I also started to discover that there were certain types of teams or sizes of teams that I mostly enjoyed working with. And so over time, you can start to kind of hone in on maybe key content areas, which is very helpful to the client. But when I'm in front of the room, even if I'm very, very familiar with their content, I am not there as a consultant. I am there to guide the process, and I can more effectively guide the process when I know a little something about what's going on inside the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. And that helps me a lot as well to know which hat you are wearing, that if you are coming to facilitate, it's not your job to advise.
Yeah.
That's super helpful. And then is it usually a long process, or that really varies from when the client engages you to when the final deliverable, and I will ask you what it is, the final deliverable emerges?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it completely depends on the job itself. So if I was let's say I was doing just a kind of a typical strategic planning kind of job, or maybe a design thinking sprint or something like that. Then if I didn't know the client at all, there's a little bit more upfront work, right? To really kind of dive in. I spend a lot of time truly trying to understand what's going on and ensuring that I'm actually at the right starting point in the process, because it can look like a tangled ball of string at the beginning. And not everyone who comes to us is perfectly clear about what it is that they want out of this at the end, or where they even need to begin. They might just come and say, we have a problem.
Well, it's awesome. They know they have a problem.
Right? We have a problem and we need to get somewhere else. We need to be in a different state than where we are. So we just spend time kind of unpacking that and trying to understand where is the actual concrete starting point of this session. So you could also spend a lot of time in preparation, design. You might be making specific materials for this session, developing tools. if there's a lot of people involved, like if I'm doing, for example, a 3-day leadership retreat with 25 people out in the mountains, you need to be very, very well prepared for that. So the upfront time can vary, but definitely it is at minimum 2 to 3 times as long as the job itself, right? So let's say you had an hour-long facilitation, it probably will take anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 hours just for preparation for that one piece. Although I've also done 1-hour jobs where it could take days of preparation, right? So it really does depend on the specifics of the situation.
Yeah, and that's great to know because I know that no one has really time to sit and invest in the homework. So facilitation, basically commitment to facilitated effort, requires from you to really invest and share materials.
Yeah.
And yeah, the success is basically in preparation and the skillfulness of the person who
Yeah.
facilitates. That's great to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think of it a little bit like if you went to the theater and you were watching a play.
Mm.
You know, it looks smooth, it runs smooth, it looks beautiful, and everybody claps. And it was a, you know, this great experience, and everybody hits their marks, right? And everything's timed well, and people have got their costumes on, and the lighting works, and it's all kind of working in sync. But that didn't come from nowhere, right? That was months of kind of preparation for that. And, you know, there's also situations where, you know, I've had where perhaps I've been invited just as a guest with a client to you know, sit in on something, and then something happens in the middle of the meeting and they're like, oh my god, this is going off the rails, we need help. And they might turn to you, or, you know, another in another case a different facilitator, and say, can you just jump up and help make this happen? And so that's not months of preparation. You're bringing with you in that moment all the experiences that you have, all the knowledge you have, all the frameworks you have that you're working with. So for example, if you are really skilled at a particular questioning framework, then even if you haven't written down every question, but you know the framework really well in your head, then you know what to do even in a spontaneous moment.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that everything has to be super duper prepared. If you're really skilled as a facilitator, in many cases, like you have these kind of frameworks running in the background that help you to lead the group.
Yeah, and the question popped up in my head as you were talking. Conflict management is a special area of facilitation, because I know a couple of people who kind of specialize in that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that up, actually. That's sort of where I started and how I came into facilitation in the first place. I was very, very interested in conflict resolution. And I had actually started doing some certification in conflict resolution and dispute resolution. And when I was on that path, someone said to me, hey, have you ever tried facilitation? And I was like, what's that? I have no idea, you know, 20 something years ago. And so I went and started to learn more about facilitation and was like, wow, this is amazing. But one of the things that I also learned is that as a facilitator, so you might have some facilitators who they sort of specialize in high heat situations, dispute resolution, conflict resolution kinds of scenarios where it's really, really specifically about that. And there are an example of that might be a facilitator who is a specialist in public engagement. And so you imagine, you know, these sort of big kind of town halls or different kinds of public participation events where you might have people who are, maybe it's about an environmental topic. And I facilitated one that had to do with, you know, guns in the community and policing and the effects of that on the community. These are very high heat situations. So you might have some facilitators who that's kind of their happy place, so, ironically, right? But that's where they really concentrate, and they're really, wow, those people are just brilliant at kind of creating space for that and helping groups to move along productively. Now, all the other types of facilitation that goes on, whether you're doing creative problem solving, strategic planning, design thinking, whatever else is happening, you still have to have the skills to be able to handle potential conflict. And sometimes you could just see that as differences of opinion, but perhaps strong opinions. You also need to be prepared for power dynamics in a room. And you need to know some of that in advance. And it's often, I'll be searching for that before I even go into the room, trying to get an understanding of what am I walking into? What are the red flags? What's the dynamics in the group? And sometimes I'll have a client say, oh, well, that person, they're really difficult, so maybe we shouldn't invite them. And I'll say, oh, no, you have to invite them. If you leave them out of the room and out of the conversation, you're going to continue to have the problems you've been having. Let's get them in the conversation and see if we can try and break down some of those barriers and walls and find some kind of common ground. So even in what you think might be a really mundane kind of or not high heat situation, you still have to have those skills to be able to bridge and facilitate and support difficult conversations.
And that can happen in any team. And you are right, very often the flags are not raised at all, and people don't know there is an external solution to that. So that brings me to a couple of questions that are connected. First of all, is facilitation a skill or a profession? Is there a certification, or how do you learn facilitation? And on the flip side of that, how do regular business owners or team leaders know to find the right facilitator, because you describe such a huge range of skills and specialties?
Yeah. So to kind of quickly cover both of those things, and then I'll break it down. A really good resource is the International Association of Facilitators. So this is our professional association. It's global. There's facilitators from all over the world who are involved. And it's also the body through which you can receive certification. And there's different levels of certification that you can go through. Okay. And it's quite a robust process to go through that as well. But you can kind of work your way through the program. Also through the IAF, it's a great place to just get introduced to the world of facilitation, because there's lots of local and global learning events. And certainly these days with virtual, you can pick up on any of these events from all over the world, where you get a chance. If you're a member, you can just attend these for free, and you can learn from facilitators all over and just start to get exposed. What's also great about that is that you're going to see other facilitators facilitating.
In action, yeah.
Facilitating facilitators, which is a whole, I mean, some facilitators would rather take that public stakeholder meeting with high heat situation than facilitate other facilitators. Yeah. But what's so lovely is that you get to see all these different styles, because just like any profession, we might have very similar skills, or perhaps we've come at facilitation from a different pathway. And so we've learned it in different ways. There's still a core set of skills that you would sort of need to have. But we all have our own style as well. So that kind of speaks to like, how do you choose a facilitator? I think, well, I'm on the other side of that question, so it's kind of a funny one to
then you can answer how you find your clients, or they find you.
No, but I think I can. Let me take a crack at it, because I think it's important to actually explore that. So if you were a business and you were looking for a professional facilitator, or you're looking for a facilitator, so there's a couple of things to know. One is there's a lot of people that call themselves facilitators. Yes. Okay. And they might do very, very different things. They might not do what you need them to do. So it's a little bit, it's not like, okay, there's an ice cream store and there's different types of ice cream stores, but generally speaking, if you go to the ice cream store, you're going to get ice cream. Okay.
Yeah.
But in this case, it can sometimes be a little bit watered down. So the term facilitation has been kind of adopted in other professions as well. So you might have someone who, let's say they work for United Way and they are a community facilitator.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't mean they are a professional process facilitator who is going to be able to design a specific process for you. It might mean that their job is to help communities come together, work together, and they have a lot of content skills around community development and things like that. And that's brilliant. And it's all good with me if they want to call themselves a, facilitator as well, because they're also easing the path for that group. So, but then there's also lots of independent facilitators who have their own consultancies and practices. And so that's probably, if you're in business, that's a little more what you're kind of looking for. If you go to the IAF website, you will find they actually have a Find a Facilitator database. Now, first of all, these are all members of the IAF. So one of the things to know about that is that if you're a member of the IAF, you are asked to adhere to a certain set of ethics, a code of ethics as a facilitator. And so that's, it's good to know that. And you can also look for a facilitator maybe that's in your region, and then you can start to explore, like, what does that facilitator perhaps specialize in, or what's the thing that is their thing. So if you're doing a public stakeholder engagement, you're going to want to find a facilitator that's kind of their thing, right? Now, other facilitators can perhaps also do that, and you might have a facilitator that you love working with, then go for it. Or if you're looking for creative problem solving, then you might want to try and find someone who sort of has that sort of maybe focuses on that and has kind of built their practice around that a little bit more. So yeah, so you can check that out, but also just talk to them, right? Get a feel for, is this the right vibe for me? Is this the right energy for my group? Does this person perhaps have the the style that's going to suit us? One thing I learned through my practice all these years, and it was a big lesson for me probably about 2 or 3 years into facilitating, is that I'm not for everyone, and everyone is not for me, right? So every group is not for me, and I'm not for every group. And I mean, I say that kind of generally, but that comes from experience as well. The facilitator is not a magician. They are not going to magically make you all get along or magically make your strategic plan be the most brilliant thing ever. It's a collaboration, a dance between the facilitator and the group. All right. You need to really all be there together to really make it effective.
Yeah, so sounds like in any true partnerships, trusted partnerships, you need to find your person. Yeah. And I had the next question, but you like opened up the door for that question as well, saying your group and not your group. Who are the most known facilitators? Because Simon Sinek comes to mind. I've heard that name across the fold in facilitation community, and also he does those workshops about the why. And also I heard him saying there are like my clients and not my clients, and I'm okay with that, and you need to be too. Who are the celebs in the business?
Right. So it's interesting you bring up Simon Sinek. I don't think he's a facilitator. I think he's a management kind of guru, and I think he trends. I think he's packaged himself very nicely. But and lots of people really like his stuff and use it and respect it. And facilitators might draw from some of the things that he says, but I don't think I would call him a facilitator, and I'm not sure if he calls himself a facilitator. I think he's more about the content and is trying to be a what do they call them? Thought leader. I guess that's sort of the jargon term, right? For that kind of thing, or management guru type person. So yeah, but we can learn a lot from people like that. In the facilitation community, I would be very hesitant to call anyone a celebrity within the community. I think it's actually a pretty humble profession. And this is completely my own perspective. So you might have other facilitators who feel differently, which is all good. There are, of course, there are people within the community who have really incredibly deep knowledge and experience that they bring and share with the rest of the facilitator community. And we learn from those people. There are people who do the really deep work and deep thinking around process. They develop methods, they write books on facilitation. They're really helping to support kind of the knowledge and wisdom and methodologies and theories that come into facilitation. Then there's people who are really on the cutting edge. There's people who are really pushing the boundaries of facilitation, of techniques, of experimentation, and trying new things and combining things and mashing things together, right? And there's people who contribute by being mentors, by helping to organize events where people can learn together. So I think there's a lot of different people who play different roles, and there's young people coming into the profession who are just like, as they should be, questioning everything and turning things inside out and upside down. And saying things like, wow, I just discovered this. It's like this was new, and the world needs it. And so I think we all have a place in it and a way to contribute to it. It might just be different. So, I mean, I have people who I really respect and look up to, who I think are real leaders in the community, but I wouldn't go so far as the celebrity side of it. Yeah.
And I love this answer, because together we definitely can achieve more, facilitating each other, and the community is definitely there. So we are nearing the end of our interview, and I wanted to ask you, maybe you can give me a couple of your proudest moments in your career, what facilitation has done for the companies or organizations you worked with.
Well, I think, there's probably lots of examples of where we've been able to create a great experience for the group, or really effective outcomes that kind of help to transform the business and stuff. But there is one moment that comes to mind, and it was really unexpected for me. So I'll bring it up, which is, I had a client, after years of working with this client, and over those years, he had a few promotions in his career. And at one point he had a promotion, and, we wanted to celebrate that with him and congratulate him. And in that conversation, he said, well, I owe it to, I owe a lot to you guys for helping me get to where I am today. And I was like, what is he talking about? Like, this doesn't, I don't get it. And what he meant was that the work that we supported him on, bringing his team together, helping with those collaborations, helping develop good strategies for the business, all these kinds of things, also helped him be a more effective leader and have really good outcomes. And what we didn't expect was that also meant that for him, it would propel him forward in his career and his profession. And what I'm really, I guess, proud of is that that happened, and it wasn't anything that we had planned for, but it was a really, really nice thing to hear, that all of that work over time actually really had a positive effect on him.
That's an amazing example, because I know the space is very populated. Everybody is, striving to get higher and higher, but everybody judges by result now. And the more effective you can deliver that result, the more the fit it is for the organization.
Yeah.
That's just promotes everybody.
Well, there's just on that, because I'll end with this too, is that the IAF also has something called the Facilitation Impact Awards. Okay, so this is a global awards program that's held every year. And in fact, if there's anyone out there that wants to put in their awards submission for this year, the submissions are now open, or they're just opening. You can find out on the IAF website. But that awards system or program highlights the measurable and tangible outcomes and impact of a facilitated event on a particular company or organization or group of people. So it's a great place. There's lots and lots of amazing stories on the IAF website about facilitated events and the concrete, tangible business outcomes or organizational outcomes that have come as a result of the work.
That's perfect, because people can also go back and see what's possible. And maybe
absolutely.
there are like amazing underutilized results or discoveries that we can make. Amazing. Tamara, thank you so much for being with me today. And lastly, I need to ask you to introduce yourself and share how people can find you.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm Tamara Eberle. I'm a certified professional facilitator in Canada, although I do work globally as well. My business is called Traction Strategy, which is tractionstrategy.ca. I also have a second side to my business, which is called Traction Toolbox. So tractiontoolbox.ca. And that is a curated collection of business games and tools from around the world for facilitators or business leaders as well. So you can find me there. And I'm sure you can provide my email as well, Kira.
For sure. I will share all the details. And that was a super valuable conversation. Years of experience merged into 30, 40 minutes of conversation. Thank you so much for that.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.